Torah is also compared to snow, in the same sense that snow originally is water, and then it freezes, and then later it melts and becomes again water. There are different levels of Torah. There's a level that the Torah begins the same way that snow begins with rain, is made from rain, freezing rain, and then it becomes water again. It starts from water, it originates from water, and then it dissolves into water. In the same sense, Torah, there's the level of Torah as it is in the higher worlds. Later, in between, it goes through a process of a descent into our world, and then later it turns into water again. So as it descends, it's in a sense of a snow, ice, as we'll mention further what it is. And then it melts, and it reaches the level of Torah that we can relate to it.
It's concentrated. It's concentrated.
Right, it's concentrated, and then which is basically concentrating shows on a limitation of the revelation, as we'll mention further if time allows. The same thing is also another thing that we see by snow, that it's combined from many flakes. In mitzvahs also we find every mitzvah, every detail. In tzedakah we give charity, every coin counts, every coin combines, and together it adds up to a big amount, a big sum. Another interesting thing, this is something that happened in 1979. It was Neshei Chabad. Neshei Chabad, the branch of Lubavitch Women's Organization, they were having a winter convention, and they had it in Detroit. And, of course, snow in Detroit is not something new and indifferent. They had a snowstorm. They couldn't get back home. They rode into the Rebbe. There's a winter convention over a weekend. And the Rebbe wrote to them that it's a wonder, after being taught so much about divine providence, that all of a sudden something happens and they think that they're being tortured. So they started to do activities, meeting people, introducing Shabbos candlelighting to women, to girls, and eventually they were able to start getting home by train, by plane. And they wrote to the Rebbe that they managed to go home. They managed to get they did activities, mitzvah campaign activities, and they managed to get home, to go home. So the Rebbe says, it is a great merit that a person is being shown with the finger from above what he needs to do. And the Rebbe says the same way that the snow comes down strong, the same way they should be working strong. And now they can all go home to their family, to their house in a safe way. This was an answer, very unusual answer that the Rebbe wrote, a response to the women, Lubavitch women who were on a convention, winter convention in Detroit in 1979. In halacha we find snow comes up from time to time. There is halacha in regards to rain, to Shabbos. Could you dissolve snow? Could you walk on snow? Could you, if you're intending to melt it, could you put snow into your liquid, like your ice? So according to halacha, a person should first put in the water and then the ice. They cannot put in the ice first because it's considered like dissolving it directly. Another place where snow is discussed is in regards to a ritualarium, a mikveh. Could you make a mikveh from snow? So there is a controversy, and Pashut, to combining it all and then making snow. So it's discussed in halacha. Snow does come up. There is a Gemara, a Talmud in Yuma, that Hillel was not able to afford the entry fee into the study hall, and he lay down on the roof to listen from there. And suddenly they saw a shadow there was covered with snow. It was a snowy day, it's covered with snow, and they just took him in, they revived him, and this is a story in regards to snow. Chassidus Kabbalah explain that snow represents the 13 attributes of mercy. It is a level, as it's mentioned in Daniel, Sar Reshe Kamar Nekei. It shows the spiritual aspect of what is expressed in the beard, what is expressed in the higher attribute of Kesed, the crown, which is over all the attributes. So basically, we spoke about winter, summer, rain, and snow. Okay, now we'll be able to appreciate an interesting verse in Tehillim. I think it's in the 50s, in Psalms. Beveis Elikim nahalach berogesh. In the house of the Almighty, we will go with rogesh. Rogesh means, the literal meaning of rogesh means auspiciousness, respect, reverence, walking into the house of the Almighty. Then comes an additional lesson. Rogesh is an acronym for 3 words: Ruach, Geshem, and Shelik. That whenever, even if it rains, there's a wind, there's a rain, there's snow, we always will go to the house of the Almighty. We will always go to shul, to the study hall. No weather will stop us from or interfere from going to the Almighty, any season in the year. So that's the abbreviation, Rogesh, Ruach, Geshem, and Shelik. Wind, rain, or snow. Now we're getting to another ingredient of the winter, which is cold. We mentioned earlier that cold is basically symbolizes the opposite of sacred matters, the opposite of godliness, because by godliness we find it's basically Avaya lekecha eish eichlahu. The Almighty is compared to a fiery fire, warmth, excitement. So therefore, a person, when it comes to coldness, a person has to fight against it. How does one fight against it? With warmth. And here comes an interesting quote that the Rebbe writes on the 16th of Shvat, which actually happens to be the beginning of the cold season. The second part of Shvat and the second part of Nisan, of the first part of Nisan, are considered Koir, the cold part of the season.
Why is that? It's colder before that.
It's colder before, but basically the main concentration is that's basically more like located proper in that area, mamish. So as our sages tell us that basically Koir, that's the breakdown. There's planting before. So the Rebbe writes on the 16th of Shvat, the Rebbe writes that coldness, between cold and denial in the Almighty, is a thin wall. As it says, the Almighty is a fiery fire. Godliness is a flame fire. Learning, studying, and praying needs to be done with the excitement of the heart. All the limbs, all the organs of a person are involved in reciting the words of the Almighty in the study of Torah or in prayer. So basically, another difference between the cold and hot is that cold shows a lack of life. A lack of sign of life, as we see it in the body temperature, in order that a person should know that they are up to their exactly how the standard of the body should be. 98.6 as the body temperature. If a person has more, might have fever. If a person has less, it's to be looked into. Could be everything is normal also. But basically, the heat, warmth, is something that is a sign of life. When it came to the 10 plagues in Egypt, the first one that they were struck with was the blood, dam. They were struck with blood. The second one was fardeya, frogs. What is the difference between blood and frogs? Blood is hot, warm, it's a sign of life. Frogs is a cold mammal, is sign of coldness. Therefore, there is a difference between cold and hot. When it comes to the evil inclination, it says in Chumash Dvarim, it says in the fifth one of the Chumashim, Deuteronomy, that it says in Parshas Ekev, in the Torah portion of Ekev, that you find yourself in a desert, which is Midbar HaGodol VaHaneiro, a great and an awesome desert. Eretz Nochash V'Sora V'Akrav, there are snakes there, scorpions, everything. And in Eretz that there's no water there. And there's the thirst and no water. So the Rebbe explains in a very interesting way that the desert, this verse is actually in the weeks after Tisha B'Av, after we commemorate, we lament the exile that we find ourselves in. So the Rebbe says this verse teaches us how we got in the first place into this exile. When a person looks at the world, which is considered like a desert, 70 nations, like it was then, and he sees HaGodol, the first thing is, oh, it's great, it's big. It means something to the person, to the Jewish person. Then comes Haneira. Not only is big that he feels he's outnumbered, but Vahaneira, it's awesome. It has an impression on the person. It's not just out there. He feels that his opinion has to be based on what it says there. Al derech, like the Rebbe said in regards to a certain newspaper, that it's sad that they have such an influence on Jewish people. Basically, that a person is a Jewish person is Ama Nifchar, but we were given the Torah at Mount Sinai. This is a time that a person has to feel connected to the Almighty. And therefore, when it comes to looking out at the world from the perspective even of world, the person says, what connection do I have with them? I'm saying there's 70 nations. Okay, I'm one nation. As the Medrash says, it's like a sheep among 70 wolves. Then it says Haneira. The problem is he's getting overwhelmed. He's overwhelmed and impressed by it. Then comes Nochash Sora V'Yakrov. Nochash, the poison of a Nochash, the venom of a Nochash is hot, of a snake is hot. The venom of a scorpion is the opposite. Nochash Akrov is cold. So the Rebbe says these are two illnesses in a spiritual level. There's sometimes a person goes out in the world and he sees the world, Nochash, he gets involved, hot, he's excited, and there's energy there, there's liveliness, there's heat, there's everything. So this is one level. The Rebbe says there's a worse level than that he gets cooled off completely. Cooled off from everything that relates to Torah, relates to its commandments. So the Rebbe says when it comes to heat, so he's excited in worldly matters, but there's a sign of life, there's heat there. So you can at least convert that heat for something positive, for something for sacred matters. When it comes to coldness, it's a lost case. There's no sign of life. This is basically what coldness is. Coldness is something that there's no sign of life, that there's no energy there, there is no push, there's no initiative. So therefore the Rebbe says the fight against coldness is more difficult than the fight against heat. The heat in negative things, a person could always switch back. Needs work, needs exertion. But when it comes to the fight against coldness, it's like fighting Amalek. And therefore over there's no logic that can really have an impression besides just destroying. And this is basically what Keir means, coldness. In a person, there is also coldness and heat. The coldness is the logical mind. The heat are the emotions.